Hello friends, my name is Dr. Jyoti Prakash and I am Assistant Professor in the Department of Management, School of Management Sciences, Lucknow. Now, in this video lecture, we will have a discussion on the topic job design, as the name itself refers to designing of a job in terms of maintaining the interest level of the employee, so that they do not lose their interest and they just give their productivity and efforts in achieving the organizational objective. So, just start the discussion on the particular topic named job design. As job design is the succeeding step to job analysis. In the previous class or video lecture, I have explained the job analysis term and the functions of HRM. One of the function of HRM, job analysis, refers to the detailed description or detailed information about a particular job in terms of duties and responsibilities and the personal traits and the as well as the individual traits required in order to perform that duties and responsibility. So, job analysis includes the terms or the aspects like job specification and job description. Job description describes the job in terms of performing the duties and responsibilities, and if we talk job specification, the personal traits and the attributes and the educational qualification, the level of experience required in order to perform a particular job. So, job designing comes after the function of job analysis. Job design is somehow a relatively new trend in HRM. The name itself refers that time to time a job should be redesigned in order to maintain the creativity and the interest level of the employees, so that they do not feel bored and they do not feel monotony in performing or in justifying the roles and duties that they have been assigned by the organization. So, the HR managers have also realized that the design of the job has a considerable influence on the productivity and job satisfaction, because they realize the need of redesigning a job from time to time in order to fulfill or in order to match up the requirement of the industry or the scenario, which may occur any time in coming in future. So, they also realize that whatever the job for that employees are being hired by the organization, that should also be taken consideration in terms of redesigning, so that the productivity and the satisfaction level of the employees can be ensured or can be retained in the organization. So, job design is all about an attempt to create a match between the job requirement and the available human resource attributes. The organization is having the competent or the manpower is having the required skills. So, if a HR manager is designing or redesigning the job from time to time as per the changing occurring in the scenario or the industry, they are also trying to match up the job requirement, the changing requirement with the available manpower, skills and the attributes. So, that is all about the introduction, we can say that introduction of job design. If you as a HR manager are going to take decision regarding designing the job, so these are basically some of the questions that should be that should come into the mind of yours, and these questions are like who, what, where, when, why and how. Means if you are able to define or answer these questions and these W's, so obviously you are designing the job very effectively. Like the question like who means mental and the physical characteristic of the workforce. Now, you are getting the answer about the mental and physical characteristic of the workforce that should be availed or that should be possessed by an individual in order to perform that particular job. What means if any individual is having the mental and physical characteristic, means if they those type of human resources are brought into the organization, which type of task they will perform in the organization. So, what task they will have to perform while working or while performing that particular job, where means at what location and what areas they have to work on, basically means the proper placement of the individual employee. This particular question will be answered by this particular aspect like where. When means time of the day, time of the occurrence in the workflow, means at what time the individual will have to perform that particular job, for what purpose, or for that they have been hired by the organization, they have been appointed by the organization. If we see the question like why, obviously they are hired, they are being hired by the organization, they have been given certain duties and responsibilities. Obviously with what behind that there is a purpose, and that purpose is what helping the organization in achieving the objective or the goal that the organization is carrying at, that the organization is basically carrying that time in fact. And how by working on this particular question, HR manager, you as a HR manager just get the answer, means how you help the organization in achieving the goal and the objective. So, these how basically gives the answer like the methods and the techniques and the practices that one individual should adopt in order to perform the job, and simultaneously they are also in such a way so that they just help out the organization in achieving the objective. So, if you as a HR manager are having the answer of these questions like who, what, where, when, why and how. So, obviously you will design the job very effectively and efficiently, and this particular job, if this job will be assigned to an individual, that individual must be able to perform that job very effectively and efficiently. So, now come to the introduction or the definition of job designing. Job design, as Davis in 1966 has defined job design as the specification of the content, the methods and the relationship of job in order to satisfy technological and organizational requirement as well as the social personal requirement of the job holder. Means somehow a job design is making a balance between the job requirement and the personal characteristic or the personal trait of an individual, so that that work can be performed by that individual very effectively or in a very smoother manner. So, somehow Davies has explained job designing that there should be a match, means being a HR manager, if you are designing a job, you should consider this particular fact that that job must be fulfill the requirement or must be match up with the personal trait or the personal or the qualification or the experience of the individual, so that that individual that does not face any difficulty in performing that particular assigned job. Job design is also defined as a process of describing a job in terms of duties and responsibilities, the methods to be used in carrying out the job, in terms of technique, system and procedure. In the previous slide I have explained that how, means being an employee you are getting the answer that how you will help the organization in achieving. So, there is a process that you have to work on, and through and by working on that particular process and that particular system, you help the organization in achieving the goal that the organization is carrying, and also the relationship that should exist between the job holder and their superior subordinates and colleagues. Means somehow in totality we can say that job design somehow helps the HR manager in designing the job in such a way so that there should be a friendly, there should be a cordial relationship among all the available members in the organization, so that they just work in the harmony, and that individual will not does not face any difficulty while performing that particular job. So, that is all about the definition of job design. So, the next question come into the mind of yours, obviously that what can be the goal of job designing, means you as a HR manager have been given the responsibility of designing a job, means what can be the purposes or what can be the goal that you have to achieve in fact. So, these are basically some of the goals that you should take care of, like the facilitating the interest of the employees towards the job and enhancing their satisfaction, because whatever the goal or the objective that the organization is carrying out, without the contribution of employees it is not possible to achieve that. So, being a human resource manager, because you are dealing with human resources or the manpower of the organization, so you should take care of this particular aspect that whatever or whoever the employees working in your organization, you should maintain the satisfaction level of the employees, so that or in such a way so that they just maintain their interest and their willingness in performing their role and responsibilities. So, you have to design the job in such a way. The second one is increasing employee motivation and productivity. Obviously, if you are designing or redesigning the job of any job, the basic purpose or the basic goal is what that to increase the motivation level of the employees in such a way so that they just contribute their 200% or 500% productivity towards the attainment of the goal of the organization. Covering the modern need of the employee participation, as in the first slide I have explained that job design is the new or the current trend of in HRM practices. So, obviously, if newer trend coming into existence. So, being a human resource manager, you should also pay attention on the changing requirement, that what are the changing occurring in the scenario in the industry. So, that accordingly you just introduce those elements into the job and just design the job in such a way so that you can enhance or you can just increase the participation of the employees in the overall work or in the overall performing the duties and responsibilities. If you are designing the job, you have just maintained or you have just created or formulated the content of the job and where that individual have to work on, and also explanation of the process and the system. So, obviously, you are giving a clear communication to the individual employees that what they have to work on and what they have to perform in the organization while working or while associated with a particular organization, what they have to do. So, by doing so, being a human resource manager, you are trying to make the communication process clear and you are just making your employees knowledgeable in terms of performing or in terms of justifying the role for what they have been assigned or for what they have been brought in the organization. Time to time you are working on redesigning the content of the job or redesigning the nature or the workflow of the job. You are trying, being a human resource manager, you are trying to improve the quality of work life of the employees in such a way so that the employee does not lose their energy and efficiency, and they are also devoting certain time in maintaining their personal life too. So, by doing so, you are giving an opportunity to the employees that they just make a balance between their personal and professional life in such a way and by doing so, basically you are trying to improve the performance of the employees, because if an individual is clear or is not having any tension regarding their personal life. So, obviously, they will perform or they will justify their professional life too, because they are not having any tension and they do not have any stress, and they will perform the work and they will devote their energy and efficiency with a full devotion in the organization. So, by doing so, being a human resource manager, you are trying to improve the quality of work life balance of each and every individual employee of the organization. And because you you have been given the complete information about the job in terms of the content, in terms of the method and the procedure, in terms of the place where they have been placed out, and for what they have been assigned or they have been hired by the organization. So, by keeping or by considering all these aspects, being a human resource manager, you are trying to eliminate the unnecessary level of supervision, checking and control, because an individual employee is having a complete picture about the job and they are also having a clear sense about the duties and responsibilities that they have to perform. So, obviously, there is no need of any type of supervision and checking and control activity. So, these are basically some of the goals of job designing. The next is what factors, what are the factors which somehow affect job designing. So, if we talk about the factors, these are categorized under 3 categories like organizational factors, environmental factors and behavioral factors. So, just have a discussion on these factors one by one. So, the first one is organizational factors. There are 4 factors come under this, like the first one is work nature, the second one is ergonomics, the third one is workflow and the fourth one is culture. Work nature is all about means what a particular job is, which type of duties and responsibilities should be performed in order to justify, in order to complete that particular job. So, this particular flow or this particular nature of the duties and responsibilities helps or guide a human resource manager in describing or in determining the content of a job. The second one is ergonomics, is all about making a balance between the physical capability of an individual with the which is required in order to perform the job. So, being a human resource manager, if you are designing a job, you should take care of this particular aspect, that whatever the work that the individual have to perform, the physical comfort should also be taken care of, because if an employee is physically fit, then obviously he or she will give 100% productivity in achieving or in performing the role or performing the duties and responsibilities. Workflow means if a company is offering certain products and services to the customers. So, as per the demand for that particular service or product, you just design, you are being a human resource manager, you are again and again designing the content of the job. Means obviously, if there should be certain changes done in the product or the offered services, that also require certain change in terms of performing duties and responsibilities. So, somehow this particular fact guides a human resource manager in designing the content of a job. And obviously, the culture of the organization, what the culture the organization is carrying, as per that the design of the job is being done by the human resource manager. The second one is environmental factors. Environmental factors affect the job design to a considerable extent. How? These factors include both the internal as well as the external factors. They include the factors like employee skills and abilities, their availability and their socio-economic cultural prospects. Like means if you as a human resource manager have been assigned a task to design the job. So, you just consider the ability of the employees in your organization, means there should be adequate number of manpower available in the organization, so that if any task or if any job is to be required to perform or required to complete it. So, obviously, employees are there in order to perform that particular job, and also the skills and the capabilities required in order to perform a job. So, if you are designing a job, you just analyze the number of human resources available in your organization and the skill set available in the organization, that should also taken care of by you while designing the job. And also the socio-economic and cultural expectation, means what is the background of the individual that you are having in terms of workforce, what family background or for what socio-economic background they are having, what cultural differences employees are sharing, your employees are sharing. So, if you are designing the job, you should just take care of this particular aspect, because it is very important to know the personal characteristic of your employees. So, accordingly you just design the job, and time to time you just motivate them, so that they do not lose their efforts, or they do not lose their efficiency in performing the job. So, these are basically some of the environmental factor. The next one is behavioral factors. Behavioral factor is somehow the name itself refers the factors related to the behavior of the employees, and these are some of the factors like autonomy. Autonomy is all about giving freedom to the employees. Suppose you have hired an employee and you have just communicated the roles and responsibility that he or she has to perform. So, they are also having a clear picture about that fact too. So, obviously you have also communicated the fact that they do not supervise their activities time to time. So, obviously they feel free in terms of, and obviously if you have been given freedom to your employees, they will give their efforts and their contribution or their efficiency in achievement of the goal of the organization. So, while you are designing the job element, or while you are designing the job, you should take care of this particular freedom aspect, means freedom should be introduced in each and every job, so that employees do not have a element of fear that they will be their work will be not appreciated and their work is not good. So, you just feel you just give a feel of freedom to your employees. So, they just happy and they just be happy and they just do their work in a very smoother manner. Diversity means while you are designing the job, you should take care of this particular aspect, that nowadays a particular trait is not required. In fact, in any organization an individual should be multitasking or having multi skill, in fact, or variation of skills should have in order to tackle the different situation or the diverse situation that may arise in any time or in future time. So, if you are designing the job, you should introduce this diversity element to the job, so that an individual just learn the different aspect related to a job and acquire different skills, so that that individual become efficient and capable enough in order to tackle any future uncertainty or any future problem. The next one is use of skills and abilities, because you as a human resource manager know the available skill set in your organization, the type of human resource that you have. Accordingly, you just design the job by keeping an eye on this particular fact too, means you just design the job by considering the available skill set and the abilities of the employee, so that you just match up the job requirement with the available human resource skill set, and accordingly you just help the organization in saving the cost aspect too, as well as helping the organization in achieving the goal and the objective that the organization is having. The next one is approaches to job design. These three are the approaches, like engineering approach, human approach and socio-technological approach. Engineering approach is given by F.W. Taylor, and he has given the concept like the work of every workman is fully planned out by the management at least one day in advance, and each man receives in most cases complete written instruction describing detailed task which he or she has to complete. Means F.W. Taylor explained that whatever the task and job that the individual has to perform, they have basically priorly informed by the management in written, so that they just have a clear picture about the performance and the duties and responsibilities that they have to perform in order to performing that particular job. So, a problem with this approach is what? Because it has been written on a paper. So, and that individual has to perform the same work on daily basis. So, problem of this approach is what? Repetition, means an individual is getting repetitive is doing repetitive activity every day. So, somehow there is a monotony and there is a boredom arises into the mind or into the state of individual. The mechanical pacing means the humans are not machines, in fact. So, there is also one of the problem. No end product means obviously they individuals are having a limited set of constant. So, it is also one of the problem. There is a social less or least social interaction, because they all have to work on the given instruction, and sometimes there is no input given by the employees because of the repetition, because of the physical hazards and the physical fatigue by this approach. So, it is the approach of engineering approach. The second one is human approach. Human approach is totally concerned on humans and the human aspect, and Herzberg has introduced the motivating factors like in order to maintain the efficiency or the interest level of the employees, the human resource manager has to introduce the factors or the motivators like achievement, recognition, work itself, advancement, the growth factor they have to introduce from time to time. So, managers or the human resource managers basically work on the human aspect, and they have to work on motivating potential store like MPS is equal to skill variety, task identity, task significance multiplied by autonomy and feedback. Means how you being a human resource manager, how you motivate employees. So, you have to introduce different varieties or different diversity in a job, and the task the clear picture of the task and the important role of that particular task, and also introduction of some sort of freedom in that particular job, and the feedback you have to give feedback to the employees so that they know about their performance, and accordingly they just work on that. Socio-technological approach is just like or we can say that it is somehow one of the approach which make a balance between the technical system and the social system. Means there is a balance between the machine and the man, and they just work combinedly in order to achieve the organizational goal. So, what can be what are the needs of redesigning the job? As we have discussed a lot on this particular fact that there is a need of redesigning from time to time because of the requirement or because of the factors prevailing in the scenario like technological advancement, socio-cultural expectations, use of agronomics, organizational practices, and the competitive forces available in the scenario. And by considering these factors, being a human resource manager, you just redesign the job so that you just ensure that you are able to you are trying to maintain the interest level of the employees, which somehow help the organization in achieving the objective or the goal that they are carrying. What are the steps that have to be followed in a sequence in job redesigning? So, firstly you have to identify the job that have to be redesigned. You have to work on the content that should be redesigned, and you just execute that job, and time to time you just evaluate the effect of redesigning, and you just find the fact that this particular redesigning of the job is effective for the employees or for the organization is good or bad in fact. So, these are some of the references, and you just go through and get more information. I hope you will like this particular video. Thank you, students.